we knew this was coming. We knew this was going to happen. The timing of it is a different question. The timing of this is something else, because we knew from Justin Baldoni's lawyer, Brian Friedman, that they were planning on launching a website that would list more text messages and purported evidence in this ongoing legal feud between Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds. And this is, of course, after Lively filed her lawsuit against Baldoni and his production company and others, including a PR specialist and crisis management expert. Baldoni's attorney, Brian Friedman, said that they would release every single text message between Baldoni and Lively, and that they would launch a website including all the correspondence. And it appears they did just that. On Saturday, February 1st, a website was launched, www.thelawsuitinfo.com, and it contains two giant PDF files. So one is an amended complaint in this case from Baldoni. It is 224 pages, longer than the original 179-page complaint. It is now a consolidated action, meaning that Baldoni's lawsuit against Lively and Ryan Reynolds in the New York Times and her suit against him will all be joined together as one. This was approved by the court. Friedman told CNN in a statement on Saturday, the decision to amend our lawsuit was a logical next step due to the overwhelming amount of new proof that has come to light. And then there is the second PDF on the website, and it is entitled Timeline of Relevant Events. Now, to be clear about this is Baldoni's version. This is Baldoni's side, right? These are his claims, his allegations of the series of events. However, these files provide a lot more purported material in this story that we need to go through. And to be clear, there are things in this timeline that are more specific or not laid out per se in the amended complaint, but they could very well be used in an upcoming trial if this goes to trial. It's currently scheduled for March 2026. Now, before we get to all of this, I got to give you a little bit of a quick context and backstory to set up what we're talking about here. So Blake Lively sued Justin Baldoni, her former co-star and director of the movie It Ends With Us. This was first in the form of a CRD, a Civil Rights Department complaint, before it matured into an actual federal lawsuit. She claims that Baldoni and others engaged in misconduct on set, including sexual harassment, whether that be allegedly improvising intimate scenes, allegedly fat-shaming her, allegedly inappropriately discussing sex and pornography, allegedly violating protocols in place for nude scenes, and there's a lot more. And then she claims when she voiced these concerns, she alleges that Baldoni and his team devised a smear campaign against her, using the press and digital manipulation to turn public sentiment against her, both online and in the media. So she sued him, his production company, Wayfarer Studios, as I mentioned, his PR rep, a crisis management specialist, expert, Wayfarer executives, and others. Now, Baldoni countersued, claiming that all this are false allegations, and these were false allegations, according to him, that were weaponized by Lively, as well as her husband, Ryan Reynolds, to take control over the film from him, that he is the victim of being bullied by Lively and Reynolds, including on one occasion where he claims he felt pressure to accept Lively's rewrites of a key scene because Reynolds and mega superstar Taylor Swift praised Lively's work in front of him. He also claims that Reynolds tried to get his talent agency to drop him. Why don't you keep that one in mind? We're going to revisit that one a little bit later. But Baldoni has also sued the New York Times, too, because he alleges that they illegally coordinated or colluded with Lively to release a bombshell article the day after she filed her initial complaint. And it was entitled, "We Can Bury Anyone Inside a Hollywood Smear Machine." And he says this was filled with sloppy reporting. It was one-sided. It was filled with false allegations against him. So now what happens? Baldoni and his team launched this website over the weekend. And I said the timing of this is something else. Why? Because what is actually happening on Monday? Well, I will tell you at the time of this recording, it's happening about 2 hours from now. But the first court hearing in this case is happening in New York federal court. And what is being discussed at this initial court hearing? That Lively and Reynolds have been trying to stop Brian Friedman from what they claim is essentially litigating this case in the media and the public. They have opposed all of his public comments rules. Well, in the escalating legal saga that has captivated Hollywood and maybe the whole nation, the once promising partnership between Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni has turned into a bitter legal battle. The two co-starred, they collaborated together on the highly anticipated movie It Ends With Us, based on Colleen Hoover's best-selling novel, which hit theaters last summer. However, behind the scenes, tensions between Lively and Baldoni quickly escalated, leading to accusations of a smear campaign, public fallout, an ongoing lawsuit, and it all began when Lively filed a complaint against Baldoni that later matured into a lawsuit, alleging that he sexually harassed her and then orchestrated a smear campaign against her when she brought her allegations to his attention. And Baldoni then filed a countersuit alleging Lively, along with her husband Ryan Reynolds and her publicist Leslie Sloan, that they all defamed him. And he also accused them of civil extortion. Well, yesterday, Lively and Baldoni's legal battle escalated in court, where their attorneys met for the first hearing in this very high-profile legal dispute, and this trial date has already been set for March 2026. So to break all this down, I want to bring on a special guest. We are joined by celebrity attorney, litigator, who famously represented Johnny Depp in his high-profile trial, watched by the entire world, Ben Chew. Ben, thank you so much for coming on. It is great seeing you. Now, Ben, we haven't talked about this before, and the first question I had is, and we're already seeing this online, there have been a lot of comparisons between this case and the Johnny Depp Amber Heard legal saga that unfolded in 2022. There is a big difference here, practically. We won't have cameras in the courtroom for the proceedings and potentially an upcoming trial for Lively Baldoni, this federal case. But why are we seeing the comparisons? Why are people making the comparisons? And do you think those comparisons ring true?
Jesse, thank you for having me. It's great to be here and to see you again. I think there are some comparisons. You have, on both sides, you have prominent actors, which you had also in the Depp case. I think the stakes are a little bit different in this case. In Johnny's case, he was suing for defamation. He was really suing to get his reputation back. It was more of an existential issue for him, a challenge that we had, and I think the other side had, but I think they really have it in this case, is to convince a jury of lay people why they should care about a dispute between two very powerful, successful, attractive actors. And I think that's a challenge irrespective of the serious nature of the allegations.
That's very true. And look, the allegations that were leveled in Depp v. Heard were very, very different than what we're talking about here. But I do want to talk to you about the first pre-trial hearing in New York Southern District Court. So Blake Lively's team was requesting a protective order to essentially prevent Baldoni's team, and maybe more specifically his attorney Brian Friedman, from making public comments about the case. And we're learning that this hasn't necessarily been granted. The judge basically told the parties to follow the rules here. There was initially, it was an idea of let's come up with a protective order by March 11th. But it seems what the judge has said is more specifically, be careful of the out-of-court statements that you make because you don't want to materially prejudice a case. You don't want to taint a jury. What does that mean for these attorneys? What does that mean for Brian Friedman? Will he not do more interviews? Will he not do podcasts? What's the line between speaking publicly about the case and regurgitating what your claims are and what your defenses are versus crossing the line?
Jesse, it's such a great question. So let's unpack it because they're different issues. Putting aside whether there's a protective or gag order in place, as you well know, you always want to be careful as an attorney to say strident things or to go too far, because even if there's no gag order or protective order in effect, judges tend not to like to see attorneys mouthing off or becoming strident, that there's only one star in a courtroom and that's the judge. Then you have the issue of whether there is a gag order. In my experience, I've been on both sides of this issue. Judges are loath to impose protective orders or gag orders because the very nature of court proceedings is that they are open to the public, and any restriction on speech is anathema. I had one case which I thought we had a very compelling case for a gag order, and the court said, no, at least not now. not until we get closer to trial. Now, as you know, once you get within the proximity of trial, once the jury summonses are going out, judges tend to be more receptive because of what you said a moment ago, which is the danger of tainting the jury pool. So I think as we get closer to the trial date, I think the judge might be more receptive to granting some form of gag order. But when you're out several months from trial, I think most judges tend to be leery of protective orders. Now, there is one protection, and this is the third bucket, I guess, in response to your question. And that is lawyers always have to be careful, and they sometimes forget in their zeal to represent their clients or to promote themselves, they come up with some kind of dramatic quote. And attorneys need to be careful that even in the absence of a gag order, it might upset the judge, or it could even subject them to defamation liability, that they can say almost anything they want to in court, but once you step outside of court, you can be sued for defamation just like anybody else. And that can also get your client sued. It can also get you conflicted.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point. I know there's been talk about the litigation privilege. You should be able to say what you need to say. I did think it was interesting. The judge said that he would accelerate this trial date, currently scheduled for March of 2026, if they violate the rules. If they start, going past and saying things they shouldn't say. Can a judge do that? Would a judge do that?
A judge has enormous powers. Yes, I think a judge could do that. I mean, that's a somewhat draconian penalty to accelerate and would leave the judge open to criticism. It also might hurt the court itself because the court wants to have an interest in fairness and wants a smooth trial, and accelerating something too much might be cutting off the judge's nose despite his face. So that seems like an interim threat to hang out there, but not, I would think, the judge first would go to lesser sanctions, maybe monetary sanctions, or a gag order or an enhanced gag order, threat of contempt. I've seen that before, where a court will hold a contempt finding, hold it in abeyance, which is a pretty big sword to hold over a lawyer's head.
Yeah, you don't want to be facing that. Okay, so I have a lot of things I wanted to ask you about. The first thing I also had to ask you about in relation to this was what happened over the weekend. So Baldoni's team, maybe more specifically Brian Friedman, creates this website. They launch it. It's called thelawsuitinfo.com. And posted on this, one is an amended complaint, and the other is an alleged timeline of relevant events that includes a ton of text messages and emails to and from pretty much everyone involved in this case. I thought it was really interesting before Monday, before a hearing, to determine whether you're making inappropriate out-of-court statements or whether or not you might be silenced, to post all of this on a public website for everybody to see. And that's where you list this new amended complaint. I thought that was pretty bold. You think that's a good idea? Wise decision? What do you make of that?
I agree. Bold, aggressive, chutzpah, whatever the right term is. I think it is very aggressive. Usually, you would not do something like that before a hearing, but I'm sure that they vetted it carefully. They vetted the material carefully. Certainly posting a pleading doesn't seem to me to be out of bounds. These are pleadings made in the public records. Whenever you're getting into work product or advocacy pieces, then I think, it's getting closer to the line. So, but it's a novel approach, a bold approach.
So I mentioned that if you look at the court of public opinion right now, and I can't say this across the board, but I would say a good portion of what we're seeing is a lot of people siding with Baldoni. In fact, when we did a live stream yesterday of this court hearing, 96% of our followers sided with him, 4% with Blake Lively. And then again, we did an episode on the celebrity reactions, and a lot of people in Hollywood are supporting Blake Lively. There's a division there. Based on what we've seen so far, and I gotta tell you, we've seen a lot what might make its way into a trial. Text messages, audio messages, video evidence, other images, metadata. Who has the stronger case right now? I know that's tough to ask. Who do you think has the stronger case? Justin Baldoni, Blake Lively, and I am curious, how are they going to prove their respective claims?
Well, I'm going to remain agnostic as to who has the edge right now in terms, I think you're more knowledgeable about that than I am. I do think that the more they can cite to audio tape and videotape. I think that is particularly persuasive evidence because everybody can see it. And I think it's much more impactful than just assertions, certainly assertions of counsel. In the hierarchy, I think text messages, whenever you can hang someone with their own language and they're in a position of having to explain that they didn't really mean what they said, you know the cliche, when you're explaining, you're losing. So I think on both sides, whenever they have actually used videotape, audio tape, or used the actual words of the other side, I think that that's a good day for them.
Let's talk about that a little bit. So most recently, we now have these never before seen text messages that Baldoni apparently exchanged with Ryan Reynolds. And remember, Baldoni is suing Ryan Reynolds and vice versa. And they are now on this website. So these messages are dated back to February of 2023. They're before all the drama started. They appear to be one of mutual respect. So the messages allegedly from Ryan Reynolds read, "You've been a wonderful collaborator with B," meaning Blake Lively, "and that means a great deal to both of us. Being a stand-up person is everything, and you've been just that since day one. Thank you. I'm excited for you to work together. I'm excited for Blake to crack open her creative piggy bank with someone as dynamic as you. This is going to be incredible. I happen to adore you, Justin." Now, we've taken that apart a little bit. There's a lot more to this. We've dedicated a whole other sidebar to that full message. But basically, Ben, you had Justin Baldoni reaching out to Ryan Reynolds, fanboying a little bit. Basically, I hope we can be friends. You know, I've never had a close female friend who's married. Blake Lively, he says, reached out to his wife, so he reached out to Ryan Reynolds. Ryan Reynolds was very, very, respectful and kind to Justin Baldoni. He did ask if he could adjust the shooting schedule a little bit so that Ryan Reynolds could be with his family. There was a part of this where I look at it two ways. I'm curious how you look at it. One way could say, look, we're putting this out there. Look how much praise Ryan Reynolds is asserting towards Justin Baldoni. Look how respectful Justin Baldoni is. Is he the type of guy that's going to sexually harass Ryan Reynolds' wife, make her uncomfortable, and then launch a smear campaign against her? And the other way of saying it is Ryan Reynolds a little bit in these messages by emphasizing how great it is that you're working with Blake Lively and how creative she is and how lucky you are? Does that support Justin Baldoni's argument that this is laying the breadcrumbs maybe for Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively to take control over the film? So there's a reason they wanted to get it out there. It seems like there might be something beneficial to Justin Baldoni. Do you see it that way?
Yes, I do. I think anything that shows him being cordial and correct and normal, I think is evidence, certainly that he can cite to say, look, I'm not the kind of person who would make somebody's wife uncomfortable or any woman uncomfortable on the set. On the other hand, I don't think respectful communications between parties before the fact really count against that person. Right. In other words, it almost gives more. We had a witness in the Depp case, for example, who was very praising. He said very nice things about Amber. She was nice to me. She paid attention to me. I think the other side was surprised because this was our witness. But later on, after, what was maintained where the false allegations were made, he said, I couldn't talk to her anymore. And I think that made his testimony more persuasive because this is not somebody who always had it in for this person, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so no, it does.
I think you really have to differentiate time periods. So it's quite possible, even what you would expect, for the two of them, the husband and Baldoni, to be friends.
Yeah.
The key is what happened after. How did his reaction change afterward? If your wife comes and tells you that she's been sexually harassed, you would expect the husband, Ryan Reynolds, to have a very different reaction for a lot of reasons.
And they can make the argument, Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively, that he betrayed us. We reached out, we were kind, and look what he did. Or they'll say, they've presented text messages that would suggest that he was trying to reverse the narrative later on to make Ryan Reynolds look anti-feminist. There's actually a text message for that. Talking about that, let me just go to Lively's claims for a second, because she alleges that after she brought forth her claims of unwanted touching and inappropriate conversations on set, she says she was allegedly retaliated against by Baldoni and his team in the form of that smear campaign aimed at damaging her reputation. And one of the most scrutinized text exchanges appears to show the Baldoni PR team allegedly celebrating their success in crafting negative stories about Lively. And it centers around an article from the Daily Mail titled, "Is Blake Lively Set to Be Canceled?" So you have Justin Baldoni's publicist, Jennifer Abel, appears to text his crisis manager, Melissa Nathan, saying, You really outdid yourself with this piece, to which Nathan appears to respond in part, that's why you hired me, right? I'm the best. And of course, another exchange that Abel appears to say, Justin Baldoni wants to feel like she can be buried, to which Nathan seems to respond with, you know we can bury anyone. Now, this is important. Lively's team has pointed to these messages as evidence of a coordinated campaign to tarnish her reputation. Baldoni says that those texts are taken out of context, that it doesn't show the full messages, it doesn't show the full meaning, and that he didn't organize any kind of smear campaign. But again, when she launched her lawsuit and she had, through a subpoena, all of these messages, do you think her claims about a smear campaign against her are maybe the strongest part of her allegations, or what do you think?
It could be, and that is one of the inherent problems. I mean, we're all taught to be very careful on text. We tell our children to be careful on text because these things are emails. These things are all forever. You can't really erase any of this, and they can be taken out of context in a weak moment or a joking moment or just a boastful moment. We might be inclined to say certain things that we haven't thought through. So it's an argument, if another one were needed, why we all have to be more careful in what we say, particularly what we put in writing.
And he has also made the argument, look, all the allegations about what I was doing on set are false. And even if I had agreed to a 30-point list of demand from Blake Lively about changes that need to be made on set, like no more showing nude photographs or videos, I'm saying I didn't do any of that stuff, but I will agree to move forward, to acquiesce, to move forward with the film. That it could be a very interesting point of conversation. But he's asserted that these allegations really, and the smear campaign, she's deflecting blame for her torpedoing her own career, that she made tone-deaf comments and marketing of the film. And according to Baldoni, Lively fabricated accusations of a hostile work environment and sexual harassment as means to smear his reputation, to shift the public's focus away from what she did. And this is what's interesting. As part of his push to bring everything out into the light, Baldoni releases the raw video from a scene that he and Lively were filming together where she accuses him of being inappropriate. He says she's the one who breaks character and doesn't seem to be uncomfortable, and she made comments about his appearance. Ben, have you seen the footage? What do you think about that footage? Who does it help more?
I have only heard it described, so I don't want to speculate about that, but it does kind of circle back to my original point about the risk that they both face, because they both are well represented and they both can make cases in support of their respective positions. And so there's a real danger, may not happen. One side may fully persuade the jury, but there is a danger that the jury could essentially hang, or that there might be some on the jury to say directly or indirectly a pox on both of their houses. Again, it goes back to the issue of whether they can really convince the jury as to this serious, and there are, as you pointed out well, there are very serious allegations here, but I also think there's a danger of them meeting in the middle and some people on the jury just saying, look, these are two wealthy, attractive people. I don't know what to do here.
Mm. And you know, talking about that digital evidence, the Daily Mail recently published a nearly 7-minute voice note that Baldoni allegedly sent to Lively at 2 a.m. And in the message, he can be heard apologizing. And to provide a little context, it was to apologize for what seemed to be his hesitancy to accept the script changes that Blake Lively had made to a key scene in the film. And the voicemail reportedly coincides with text messages that Lively had sent to Baldoni shortly before this, in which she said, her feelings were hurt, that Baldoni seemed to only admire her passion, but not her actual contribution. She talked about her insecurities. And it was also, by the way, around this time that Lively allegedly mentioned her inner circle of supporters, including her husband, Ryan Reynolds, and pop star Taylor Swift, who had seemed to back her work on the script, told Justin Baldoni to his face how great these revisions were. He would say, I felt pressured to accept her revisions. I'm sure he would make the argument, I felt pressured to kind of apologize to her in this message. So I was just trying to do everything the right way. The other way of looking at it, though, and we'll play a little bit of it in a second. The other way of looking at it, though, Ben, is she could say, he's calling me up at 2 a.m., talking about my body, talking about how he wants all of me. Not to suggest this is sexual, but it's just a weird thing to do, and it's consistent with what she accuses of him. I want to play a quick voice note.
I want to start with an apology. Man, reading the second part of your message, my heart sank. And I'm really sorry. I for sure fell short, and you worked really hard on that. I am far from perfect. I am a very flawed man, as my wife will attest. And, and I'm gonna f up. I'm gonna say the wrong thing. I'm gonna put my foot in my mouth. I'm gonna piss you off, probably, but I will always apologize and find my way back to center. And damn right, you got great friends if that's how you felt and they knew that. And we should all have friends like that. Aside from the fact that they're two of the most creative people on the planet. The three of you guys together, it's unbelievable. Talk about energy and just to force all three of you. But I just want you to know that I didn't need that because it's really good and it's going to make the movie sing. I am so sorry you have been through what you've been through with these other filmmakers and producers or whoever the people were that you worked with. It just pissed me off. Those heads that, I'm just still kind of blown away that this is the industry that we're in and that you've experienced that as a woman. And I know I don't need to say it, but that's not at all going to be or will be. Hopefully it's not been the experience with me. There's nothing more exciting to me like that. I get to work with Blake Lively and have her, all of her. I mean, that's what I want. And I'm going to stop rambling because it's been 6 minutes and 30 seconds. So, I'm sorry. You probably have kids all over you and a baby on your boob and you're listening to me ramble at 2 a.m. I hope you're feeling better and, give Ryan my love. Thank you for sending me that. It means the world to me that you trust me with your feelings and your thoughts like that. And, I can't wait to spend more time with you. Okay, I'm done cutting myself off. Good night.
So Ben, just real quick, what do you think about that one?